dear Professor Dr. Ardi Marwan, dear Joachim Blank, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, good afternoon and good evening to our guests from Europe and from Asia as well. Welcome to our 123rd Sarasehan lecture of the Indonesian Embassy and the House of Indonesian Cultures in Berlin, today with our guest speaker Joachim Blank, textile artist and batik expert from Berlin. Ladies and gentlemen, before we introduce our guest Joachim Blank to you, I would kindly ask Professor Dr. Ardi Marwan, Education and Cultural Attaché of the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia in Berlin, to say some words of welcome. Pak Ardi, silahkan.
Terima kasih, Bu Birgit. Selamat sore, good afternoon, everyone. Dear Pak Joachim Blank, dear guest of our 123rd Sarasehan lecture, next Saturday, Indonesia will celebrate the National Batik Day, the Hari Batik Nasional. Batik, the traditional dyeing technique that was invented in Indonesia and brought to its perfection in Java, was recognized by the UNESCO as a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity on the 2nd October in 2009. Since then, it has been strongly recommended by our government to wear batik instead of office clothes and school uniforms on Fridays and public holidays. Through this policy, batik has seen an enormous revaluation in Indonesian society, mainly in the fashion industry and in contemporary arts. A proof is that well-known Indonesian fashion designers like Danar Hadi or the New York-based Auguste Susastro with his fashion label Kraton use batik for their creations and share their colorful productions with thousands of followers on social media. A highlight in the batik fashion market has definitely the collaboration between Louis Vuitton and the Indonesian street artist Eko Nugroho, who created an exclusive scarf design using batik patterns for the iconic luxury fashion brand from Paris. Not only in the world of fashion, we can see that batik is not an extreme craftsmanship, but a lively, diverse, and creative industry. Contemporary artists in and out of Indonesia are also creating beautiful artworks, as we will hopefully learn during this event. Today, with Pak Joachim Blank, we will get to know one of the international artists who fell in love with batik many years ago. During the preparations for this event, Pak Joachim, I learned that you have been using the batik technique for your creative work for many years. Betul ya, Pak ya?
Yeah.
But I also learned
right.
that you have been giving workshops and holding lectures, thus teaching your individual technique to young students and artists, not only in Europe, but all around Asia too. Let me take this opportunity, Pak Joachim, to express my greatest appreciation to you, not only for using our batik technique as a basis for your beautiful artistic work, but also for sharing your knowledge with everybody interested, thus making batik even more popular in the international art scene. Now, I'm very curious about your lecture and hope that this event will help batik to gain more popularity. Thank you. I hope everybody will enjoy this Sarasehan. Back to you, Bu Birgit. Terima kasih.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ardi Marwan, Education and Cultural Attaché of the Indonesian Embassy in Berlin. Dear audience, our today's guest was born in 1952 in southern Germany. He is a multiple award-winning artist who received his education as a teacher in the field of arts and crafts at the University of Mainz. Since 1981, he has been working as an artist, often using layered textiles like organza and silk, using batik and other techniques he will introduce to us today. He learned the batik technique from internationally highly recognized contemporary artists and batik masters in Indonesia. His work has been shown in numerous international group and solo exhibitions in Germany, China, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Poland, the USA, Denmark, Belgium, and Russia. As a guest teacher, he gave lectures, masterclasses, and workshops at universities in China, Indonesia, and Austria. Let us warmly welcome Joachim Blank. Joachim, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Birgit. And first of all, I would like to thank you all for invitation to do this today's Sarasehan. And my special thanks is to Professor Adi Marwan, Attaché of Education and Culture of the Indonesian Embassy here in Berlin. Before I'm going to start with my paper with the accompanying PowerPoint presentation, please allow me some introducing comments regarding to my background as a batik artist. The first approach with batik I did have during my academic arts and craft studies at the University of Mainz. One of the craft course of studies was batik, which I did choose. This was close to my main subject of painting. At that time, I just have had a poor knowledge what batik itself really was. But in 1985, I did join a batik study trip to Indonesia, organized by the famous collector and gallerist Rudolf Sment from Cologne. This was a kind of manifestation about Indonesian batik, which was indeed overwhelming. After some exhibitions in Germany, I got the opportunity to take part on the Dunya International Batik Congress in 1997. This was the first International Batik Congress, and it took place in Yogyakarta. On my paper, I jumped at the chance to introduce some of the Russian artists practicing batik. This was quite exotic because only a few had any idea about Russian batik. Some of my batik was part of the Dunya Batik exhibition hall. On this occasion, my special batik techniques attract its interests. A great deal of attention occurs hereinafter. At that time, I gave my first lecture at the Institut Teknologi Bandung, Fakultas Seni Rupa dan Desain. During this period, I got the chance to meet outstanding Indonesian batik artists like AMRY, ARDIANTO, PRANATA, and Agus ISMOYO, among others. Between 1985 until the ugly pandemic lockdown, I did visit Indonesia many times. Once to give some more lectures at the ITB and the Petra University at Surabaya, and the participation of some more gatherings on batik, for example, the Lomba Batik Festival in Jogja, and did exhibitions, for instance, at the private Bandung Gallery, later on the Fiber Face International Exhibition at Yogyakarta and the Town Hall of Solo. In 2002, I had been invited to participate on the International Tapestry and Fiber Art Exhibition from Lausanne to Beijing, which took place the first time in Beijing. And this was my door opener for all my various activities in the future all over China until the pandemic stopped all my projects. This short and reduced background on my batik development will provide an insight into my batik career. But now let us start with my lecture about my special batik progress within the last 40 years. So let's start with the first file, which is named My Tools. When I start with the batik, I first only use the brush. During this period of batik realism, I got trained in accurate studies of details. The brush instrument is my main thing since the very beginning of my batik. Chanting thrills me not so much. As a batik painter, I ever used exclusively brushes, especially Chinese ink brushes, which you can see on the first picture. And they have a perfect shape and can manifold use. During my experimental stage over the years, I developed the rubbing methods in the techniques. And this you can see some materials like the bark behind and the plastic grid. For that rubbing technique, I used the big brushes, like you can see in the picture on the far right, how to rub the structure of a bark. There are some different methods I used in the following. That was just the copper print method and the wooden print block. So I heat it up in hot wax, and then I start printing on a canvas or on the cotton. And down below, there is the grid rubbing technique demonstrated. During this period of my batik, I got trained in accurate studies of details. It was not of a main interest to create a detailed copy of subjects. The things behind and the appearance attracts me, which was the charisma of a landscape, sky, and street of houses. Last one, I turned my attention on the light and shadows of street view in southern France, for example, which creates a magic depth in the picture itself. In my landscape motifs, I always was endeavored to comprehend the atmosphere in the appearance, especially the wide and open Pacific skies. Also, the impressing clouds was a fascinating theme and an inexhaustible challenge. On the first one, this is a landscape in the far east of Turkey, to the close to the border of Iran. And you can see how I did the image from the original into a batik. The second one is how to transform a landscape in the Anatolian part of Turkey into a picture below. And then the cloudy skies in a interpretation on this batik. And the last one is a scene from Greece Island, and how I did the interpretation in my batik. Did always start in the early 80s, because at that time in the University of Mainz, everybody was attracted by realism. So we did all these realistic batik art paintings. So there is another example how to do an interpretation of a street view into a batik. This attracts me because of the light and the shadow of a, for example, southern France village. This is one of my very first batik I did at university. This is a landscape in a park, and I did it by dotting my pencil on the silk. Another example of a street view, it was in Istanbul. I call it city landscapes. Well, another image of landscaping, trees in the part of Belgium, and it's in my hometown, Worms, close to Worms. This Summerfield images. So this is maybe for a wider interest with my current batik, which I used at first professionally, my rubbing techniques. And on this stage, you can see the rubbing of a plastic grid. And the infield of the batik has been cut and burned. And I filled it in with the unspun silk and with paint. The right one, I used to some jelly bones, even the same technique with the rubbing and printing with structured cardboard. On the left, you will find a kind of multi-layered batik collage, which I glued some parts of my batik in a multi-layer. And in the middle, this has been done with a wooden block. You can see the structure of the wooden block, and even the second layer was a plastic grid. And in the infield, I did burn some parts out of it and underlay it with silks. And the right one is a rubbing technique, which I used this plastic grid. And even in the middle, I did some multi-layered collage. So we have another image of wooden block stenciling. From the left to the right, The first one has been created by this rubbing method because I had an underlay of a structured cardboard, and I did rub it several times. In the middle, this is a structure of an underlay of a piece of bark, and I repeat it in 2-3 times. So you have an image of a shadow, bright and shadow parts in the batik itself. And the right one is a mixture of different rubbing methods, and with a collage technique, the blue pieces are glued on the batik. The triptych on the left, this was a stenciling method with a cork block. So you have multi-layered images of different shapes and colors. And I filled in with a calligraphy in the middle of the triptychs and the part of the triptychs. The next one, called Dancers, is even made by a rubbing method of a structured cardboard. And the blue parts is, I did use a cover stamp from Indonesia, a star motif chap. Another kind of pictures of 4 pieces, which I did the same rubbing method with a structured cardboard. And the gate is made just only with a wooden block stenciling. And this was exhibited at the Fiber Face in Jogja at that time. This is a very transparent kind to use my own batik develop, which is something like aquarelle technique, I would say, even mixed with a rubbing, and the infield, the dark parts, are just paint with a batik dye, and it's a double layer. So the first layer is a dark one, and the second layer with a organza silk. So both structures are mixed, and in the middle of this series, you can see the plastic grid shape. Even the same method, but as an appearance, you can gamble with all of this kind of stenciling, rubbing, and I did it always with a double layer. So the first layer is a batik on cotton, and the second layer is a organza silk, and both patterns are mixing, and it's a appearance of a holography, which is now in a 2-dimensional. But if you have the idea how it works, if you walk around the picture, so it's changing. All these structures are in a changing appearance. The page on green is just made with a small wooden block, and I like the structure, which is following like a falling rain or something like that. And the reflection is made with the same method. And I burned some holes into the fabric and had an underlay with different kind of silk and paper and so on. How can I say it's just the same method every time. The left one is a kind of transparent, or kind of like you do aquarelle painting, and I glued some parts of coconut fiber, and the fjord in the middle. This is a bark structure, and in this picture you can see the light and the dark parts, which has the effect that I remove the wax first, then I wax again, and I put the bark a little beside the first rubbing, so you can it's a kind of death in the picture. Even the heavens, the right one, This is made by special rubbing techniques which I use kind of cardboards. And I remove the wax and I wax again, and so it's from the bright to the dark parts in the batik. This I have did with a tropical stencil which I found in the forest of Bandung, and it was a sarong piece. This I did in the workshop of Hani Winotosastro in Jogja. Yeah, all this kind of batik is which are now following is a double layered. So the first layer is a batik on cotton with the stenciling method, and the second layer is a batik made on organza. So both patterns are mixing, and the geometric meadow is made with the same method of stenciling and rubbing. This kind of batik is made by the first layer on the cotton was made with a wooden block stenciling, and the second layer on organza silk is this structured cardboard rubbing, and both structures are mixing, so it looks like a double layer holographic images. This is a detail of this mossy overgrown pictures as well, made with a wooden block stencil. And on the right, you can see these structures a little bit brighter. So this is a very nice piece, I think. And in the infield, I did burn some holes into the batik and had an underlay with different materials like colored paper and silks and so on. This is detail. So you can see the burnt pieces on the batik and the underlay. I did it several times, about 5, 6, 7 kind of the same images. How should I say? Just watch, just see it. It's always the same method of stenciling and rubbing techniques, and a double layered batik like the slim, for example, and the left, the right one, the two on the right side, it's batik has been cut and burned and underlay with colored fabrics. This figuration, a small one, is even made with a plastic grid rubbing method. Even in my so-called abstract batik, there is an image from landscaping and so on. And the first idea I had when I have an overflow over a landscape with some rice fields or what that is, and I did this interpretation in the picture on the right. Okay, the haystack batik, the first image I got when I walk on a meadow or something like that, and I transformed that in this batik called haystack. So beside all of this, I had sometimes I did sometimes a new transforming of collage technique. And the first image is a photo, and on this I have an overlay with the organza silk. Even on the right one, I did it in the same way. So I adapted the figures, which is just like a shadow on a batik figure. But at that opportunity, I had a single exhibition at the Olsztyn Gallery in Poland, and this is a view into the exhibition. Now we switch to Institut Technologie Bandung, where I did some workshops with the students here. During my workshop at the ITB, I always worked together with the students in an extraordinary batik technique. Of course, I was afraid to use my unusual and unknown tools, which are far away from any traditional batik methods. Otherwise, it was my intention to walk off the beaten tracks and to establish an unknown method in batik so far. One of my special methods of stenciling was to use wooden blocks. These wooden blocks I did find accidentally during a walk around the forest close to Bandung city. Some trees had been cut because of an attack by pests. Hard ticks, spatfalls, and bugs had destroyed the interior tree trunk. But this vermin creates incredible designs. Cut into manageable size, it was a perfect stencil creating various pattern in combination. You have an idea about this so-called natural chops, which we find therefore in the forest of Bandung. We have the chop full shape, chop multi-structured, chop full shape half circle, chop full shape, and chop natural structure. The last one, you can see these structures made by the spatfall, hartics, and the bugs. This is an image of this wooden block stencils, which I used at the ETB during my workshop. And you have to heat these blocks like you can see on the right side in the hot wax, and then you can start with the stenciling. The students show you here in these pictures how to use it and how to create different patterns. It was very exciting at that moment because nobody had any idea about that, and it was amazing to follow the students' work. This was a view into the workshop at the ETB. So different kind of motifs has been created by the students. So on the above on the left, they used the half circle stencil, and it has been combined with several other stencils. So first we removed the wax, and then we have a new color laid on it, and then we start with the stenciling again, remove the wax, stenciling again, remove the wax, stenciling again. How it is shown on the bottom left and right. So on the left above has a combination of traditional cover chop and wooden block stenciling. And the images are quite exciting, so very interesting appearance. Even in combination with a chop and the wooden block stenciling. So they dry up the batik outside in front of the building. So after that, I worked together with a fashion design faculty, and they create some clothing, some costumes created in the first workshop of stenciling and do the surface design. Okay, in the end, we had an exhibition at the ETB gallery, and on the bottom, the person you can see here with a modern batik suit that was from Surabaya. We had some international batik artists during exhibitions and congresses, and I would announce some batik gatherings and outstanding batik exhibition. The first one I I have met was AMRY in Indonesia. He has his workshop in Jogja, and these are two of his so-called abstract batik. And in 2001, I organized the Tahta Batik exhibition. First, it starts at the Municipal Körner Park Gallery in Berlin. Next one, please. And one of the artists who take part was ARDIANTO PRANATA with his ceiling hangings. This Tahta exhibition went to Cement Gallery in Cologne, and after that to the Central Museum of Textile in Łódź in Poland. And the last one was in the Museum of Industrial History in Opatowiec, even in Poland. And all these artists took part in these exhibitions. And this is another image of a famous Indonesian batik artist. His name is Agus ISMOYO from Jogja. And he always did his impressing installations. And on the right, you have some parts of his batik. It's a detail. So this is another batik artist from Indonesia, John MARTONO in Bandung. This is a installation on the right, on the left, and a mixture of silk painting and batik, and two parts on the right. A kind of batik is which is just airbrush design of batik, which has been created by CAMANITA. During all this important exhibition, which, for example, has been take part in 2003 at the Surface Design Technology Exhibition and Congress in Aarhus, Denmark. One of the artists was Alex Russell from Australia. This is Marta Miranda from Chile, Annemie Bonen from the Netherlands, one of very important batik artists, Els van Baarle from the Netherlands. Helene de Ritter, she just used two colors, white and black, and it's a very nice image on the which hardly can see on the left. These two parts of a wall hanging and the installation on the right. Kisa Dinda from Denmark, one of the most outstanding batik artists from the UK is Noel Dyrenforth. And Pat Hudson from the UK. She is mixing computer print with batik, very unusual. And Rita Treffra from Belgium, she was a curator and organizer of the batik gathering in Ghent in 1999. Peter Wenger, he lives now in France. And Nina Stupova from Belgium, very expressive batik artist, very spontaneously. And this is a batik from Fukumoto from Japan, which I saw the first time during the International Tapestry and Art Biennale in Beijing. And Shoku Kobayashi from Japan with his geometric batik. And he used a sparkling technique to create his batik. Very unique. Tekushi from Japan. It looks like aquarelle painting. He always, I think he works on Japanese paper, batik on Japanese paper. This is a Chinese batik artist. Her name is Misao from, I think from Shanghai. And she's folding the batik, and then the cracks and the shape of the cracked wax is creating these geometric patterns. Okay, I think we are at the end of my paper, and so we can start the AQ session if you want.
I would like to ask you, are there any concrete contemporary Indonesian batik artists whom you would say who influenced you especially to find your individual way of creating art?
Exactly not, because my batik background was just transforming my paintings into a batik. When I got close to this important batik artist from Indonesia, I just learned how to use a chap, how to use, for example, the coloring, because I use direct colors and they use reactive dyes. That was, how to say, not quite, doesn't influence me so much, but this enlarged my background about batik. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was overwhelmed, for example, from ISMOYO batik, mm-hmm. because he did a multi-layered images on his batik. Mm-hmm. And what I learned from him, for example, was to remove the wax, to dye again, and to have an overprint and do it in several times. And so I followed this kind of method to create a batik. Mm-hmm. And this I transformed into my own batik style, I would say.
Mm-hmm. You just showed some very interesting pictures of contemporary Indonesian and non-Indonesian artists. Do you know in Indonesia itself, do people know these artists, or are they more known internationally? What role do they play within contemporary art in Indonesia? Do you know?
I don't know, but in this first fiber phase international exhibition, organized by Agus ISMOYO, we had some international artists, not only German, European, but even from, I think, from Japan. I don't know exactly if there were some Japan artists. So we had an international background at the Fiber Phase exhibition, and even at the Dunia Batik Congress in 1997. It was an international congress with international participating artists. And so there was the opportunity to get close to batik artists worldwide in the exhibition. Yeah. I remember I did show Marta Miranda. Marta Miranda was there, and I think Kobayashi. I don't know exactly if he was part of the exhibition, but it was quite international at that time. Yeah.
And how is it for an contemporary artist working with batik? Is a batik textile artist well recognized in the world of contemporary art, or is it difficult because is it seen more as a craftsmanship, or are you really acknowledged as serious contemporary art?
Well, we have to separate to the West and the East. In the West, when I start with the batik, it was just a handicraft. Even in the University of Mainz, at the Academy of Mainz, we are so-called the poor artists because we did handicraft. The real art form was graphic, drawing, painting, and so on, and sculpturing, of course. But batik was only on a low level. Yeah. And this changed in the future. For example, in 2 years ago, one award of the Berlin Art Award had been given to a Belgian batik artist. Her name is Ada van Horebeke, I think, and she got her award from the Berlin Art. And she's a batik artist, yeah, and this is absolutely great, yeah. And unfortunately, I'm much more older because there is a age level to take part. And she's about 25, 28, I don't know. And this enlarge and the knowledge about batik and as an art form, of course, yeah. In Poland, this is a real art form, not only batik, but weaving. And you can study that at the Academy of Arts. You can't study batik anymore in Germany at any Academy of Arts. I don't know exactly if it's wrong or right, but after I finished my studies at the University of Mainz, they closed the batik course in 1979. You never can start do batik anymore, yeah, because there was no interest. In Japan, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, batik is a real art form. It's not separate in craft, it's a real art. Don't call an Indonesian batik artist a crafts batik. And this is because how to say, for example, I know it from ISMOYO. His art is well known in the US, and he has a different cooperation with the Aborigines in the Northern Territories. It's a multicultural exchange of art. Even he was in Nigeria to do batik with the Nigerian batik artists and give lectures all over the US. And so this is more accepted as a real art. Even when I went to China, never called me a crafts art, creating crafts art. It is a kind of acceptance of a real art. Yeah.
I know that you were in China quite often for giving workshops mainly. Why is the interest in China so big to learn from a German batik artist? Do they have their own batik tradition?
They do have in the south part of China, the Mio people, they do batik, but they use only indigo and no other colors, only indigo. And when I took part the first time at the international exhibition at Beijing, from Lausanne to Beijing, I have been invited to do workshops on several Academy of Arts. And this just happened to me, by the way. It was not my intention, but they asked me to do that. And my first, shortly after closing the exhibition, I went to Beijing Academy. And then I continued is in the north of China, in Xi'an, at the Northwest University, and then go back to Shandong and to Shanghai and Suzhou, where I've been invited to a short distance workshop for 2 weeks, for example. But I just did introduce my batik methods, but I don't know if they got a more influence to create batik after my workshops. Yeah, sometimes because batik in the rest of China is not well known. Nobody is going to do batik in the north of China or in the west or in the east. Maybe yes, in Shanghai at Academy of Arts, they have a department of design, art design, and maybe they do use that. When I did a workshop at Polytechnical University in Hong Kong, we did the batik in my kind to introduce my batik as a rubbing method, stenciling method, and they widen, they make it brighter and opener by using it on a computer, and they do print it. They do use the batik as a print screen, and then they made some fashion design clothes. Yeah, that was very nice to watch that.
There is a question from the chat. Your techniques is great. I want to know, is there a prayer you want to convey to your batik wearers? Because there are meanings and prayers that are depicted in traditional batik motifs in Indonesia.
In the headline of my paper, it has been mentioned, it comes from nature. And nature is my, what should I say, the idea to create my batik. If I find a piece of bark, or if I find a wooden block or something like it, it's made by nature, it's not my own. I don't cut, for example, a copper stencil like they do it in Indonesia. So I use these natural materials to create my own batik style with this rubbing method, for example. So I have a close, I'm very close to nature, if I would say, because a piece of bark, if you find on the seaside after a rough sea, how to say, I'm very close to these materials. But it's not, how to say, like a magic, like a religion or something like that. It's just a part to create my own batik style. I tried all the last 20 years to develop my technique. So I use different materials in an experimental way first. And then I did my decision, which I can use and which not. It's always in the beginning a stage of an experimental, and then it came to a shape. So therefore, I just used some of my rubbing techniques, not all, because some was poor and others was better, and I can use it to create my surface design.
When will you go to Indonesia again to hold a lecture or workshop, or just travel?
I don't know. First, we are still in the lockdown pandemic. I don't know. This year I had invitation to China and to Malaysia, but it came to a standstill. So I can't do anything. And the last exhibition I did was in December at Triennale of Textile in Iași in Romania, but it was a virtual exhibition. Nobody can go there, and this is a little bit poor. I don't like to do that in that way, but it was impossible to do it in another way. To be present during the Triennale exhibition, to travel there.
Yes, at least, I mean, it's a channel for artists to exhibit their work. If we would not have this digital means you artists would be very, very poor. You wouldn't have the opportunity to exhibit anywhere and sell your artwork. I mean, you also have to live from selling
that's
your
right.
work, right? Yeah.
You have to be present. If you want to sell your artworks, you have to be present. And if you can't talk, for example, to a customer, you don't sell. Yeah. Because they want to know how it was made and what's the intention behind and so on. And if you can't explain it, just like we do it at the moment, this is rather poor. Yeah. And you won't get into contact with some collectors or interested in batik. Yeah. That's a pity. It's really bad.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joachim, for taking your time to be with us.
Yes, thanks so much to have invited me. But first, in the end, I have to apologize because of my poor English, which is a little bit rusty. During the pandemic, I don't have any chance to talk in English like you do it abroad. So hopefully it was not too bad. But I thank you all for participation, and well, that's all what I have to say.
Maybe we
hopefully you enjoy my presentation.
Yeah, hopefully we will have any opportunity to meet here in the House of Indonesian Cultures in Berlin sometime with other people and have a chit chat, have a cup of coffee together and some Indonesian snacks, as we used to do before the pandemic took place in Germany and everywhere. Yes.
Thank you.